This is not optional. All right, so humorous yet painful observation. I've noticed this interesting trend taking place with my son, Josiah. And in taking my son over to my parents' house to visit, Josiah, he rushes up the steps and Granddad greets him at the door. He's like, Granddad, Granddad, and he begins to tell him everything that happened to him that day at school. He's just so excited that he can't wait, and all the words just kind of topple over each other as he shares in detail all that's taken place. But as soon as I asked Josiah, hey, how was your day at school? He's like, good. What am I, chopped liver? So clearly there's some form of favoritism going on here. So I'll be teaching my son that there is no favoritism according to the Bible. So that's what I'll be doing this week. I'm just kidding. But this is exactly how the 72 disciples returned to Jesus after going to the towns ahead of him. They could not wait to tell him what had taken place and all that had unfolded for them. The 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, and behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the powers of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Now, it's easy to read this passage with an outlook fully aware of our shortcomings, right? We read it and we go, clearly there's a story here about pride. Don't let pride get the best of us. And often the passage is read with the knowledge of Jesus' warning not to become prideful in what we accomplish. And so we paint the disciples' return as these arrogant believers touting their, ministry accomplishments. Oh, Lord, even the demons, they're subject to us in your name. I don't think that's really how they returned, and I don't think they had that kind of accent. But Luke was careful to describe their attitude as joy, and I think Luke was intentional in this, and he did it on purpose. They returned in joy. The word used here means not only gladness, but that they're cognate of the source of this joy, meaning that the disciples recognized God's grace, favor, and delight in what had happened. That as they saw things taking place while they were on the road, they recognized, what is God doing here? Not just, what am I doing here? Oh, they still had to focus on their own ability. There's no question about it, and what they were able to do, but they at least still recognized the source of this power. And in fact, in returning to Jesus was part of that recognition. See, based on the way Luke writes this account, the 72 were not told that they would actually have authority over demons. It's not included in the instructions that Jesus gave them. They were prepared that they would be able to heal the sick, but not this. So they were surprised by these events, and now reporting it back as eager as my 5-year-old son runs to his grandfather, because they knew the source of their joy. They knew that Jesus would be joyful with them. And he is. In verse 21, in that exact same hour, Jesus recognizes the source of his joy, and he turns to the Father to share in the grace, favor, and delight that has taken place. But before he does, he shares with the 72 a warning that can be applied to us as well. First, he responds to their comment, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he says this kind of peculiar phrase, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Now, this is not a literal statement like, hey guys, while you were gone, you're never going to believe what I saw in the sky. He is noting that because the demons fled and were subject to the disciples in Jesus' name, was a sign of the crumbling of Satan's kingdom. This is all where this battle has been about. That the narrative that we are being told is that there are kingdoms at war. You have Satan's kingdom and you have Jesus' kingdom coming into full picture here. And so Satan's kingdom is falling down. But referring to it as the heavens, we're talking about the heights of heights. And Satan's kingdom is falling from stature. So he might even be saying, well, he lost the battle, but guess what? Soon Satan will also lose the war, right? And Satan was told of this ahead of time, yet he's still at it, right? And it's not like this slow defeat either, right? Lightning, when it comes, it's sudden, unexpected. And when have you ever seen lightning slowly approach the earth, right? And just, oh, look, there it goes, right? And when have you ever seen lightning in itself fight its course? No, I don't want to touch the ground. I want to go right back up, right? Satan's kingdom has only one direction at this point. And Jesus' victory on the cross is the KO, the one punch and done. As Jesus says, it is finished. And so the disciples were participating in a sign of Jesus' authority over heaven and on earth. They were participating in his authority. That is crazy. That's amazing. But I'll be honest, not interested. It's not exactly the thing I'm lining up to do. And maybe that's because I'm timid or I'm pretty sure I just screw it up. But it's not necessarily something that I'm wanting to be responsible for. I don't want that kind of power. And part of me is just kind of wanting to sit on the sideline and kind of cheer Jesus down the field. Hooray! Right? But Jesus is asking for more involvement than that. Behold, by the way, which means pay attention, take note. I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Okay, so serpents and scorpions were considered symbolic of spiritual wickedness, which to me is way more terrifying than actual serpents and scorpions. But Jesus is not talking about actual creatures here, but of the powers of the evil one, right? Jesus is speaking about the different parts of one thing here. Both creatures refer to different aspects of the enemy's nature. The serpent points to his deceit or lies, whereas the scorpions most likely point to his craftiness. However, both creatures are in the Old Testament, and they are tamed not only by God, but God's servant. So we'll pick on one incident. Think Moses and the staff, which turned back from a snake. So God had told Moses, go pick the snake up, and Moses did, and it once again became a staff, which highlights the two important points of what Jesus is saying here in Luke 10, that nothing shall hurt them. That this wasn't some kind of issued superpower, like they just joined the Avengers and was like, guess what? Your superpower is no one can hurt you. You're invincible. Yes, best superpower ever. No. It pertained to their mission to go to these towns and share the good news of God's kingdom. And that no power of the enemy, not his deceit, lies, his craftiness, not his power, was going to stop that because Jesus instructed it to happen. We have just spent gobs of time poring over the instructions that Jesus said. He had taken time to instruct them, and because he did that, that meant that this mission was going to be successful because Jesus has authority and has given his authority to be fulfilled on what he commanded. And that is something, by the way, that is hard for us to comprehend because let's face it, first, we have to trust that that is true. Participating in the kingdom requires an act of faith in Jesus' capacity, his capability to reign. And it's true, we have a good king in Jesus. And so if we do have a good king, we kind of need to remind ourselves of the king that we have. So let's look at this. First, Jesus cannot be overthrown. There is no one more powerful than him to do so. There is no enemy, nothing that can overthrow the power that Jesus has, the authority in which he leads. And he will not perish. He's not dying of old age, waiting to pass down the throne to an heir. He will remain king forever. And he's shown this, by the way, that he has power over death, that he will always live by resurrecting after dying on the cross. And he is faithful to uphold his kingship, the manner and the authority in which he leads. I mean, hasn't he shown us his faithfulness to us by taking our transgressions and putting them on him, going to the cross on our behalf, coming close to us when we're not worthy to be in his presence? Hasn't he shown his faithfulness? Now, we're not the 72, and the authority spoken here is specific to the occasion of that particular group and that particular mission. We're not invincible here on earth. We can't just go around doing whatever we want. But Jesus does give us a form of his authority, which is really more responsibility. It's not, hey, here's a car, do as you will, right? It's, here are the keys to my car. Now take grandma to the grocery store. Jesus gives instructions while giving us the keys to the kingdom. Now, the word authority might bother you here, and you're thinking like, Rick, look, only God has authority. I don't know what you're talking about, and this is true. God the Father has the ultimate authority. And we see, though, in the Great Commission, that he has given it to the Son. And Jesus came and he said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So Jesus holds authority over all things. Don't you ever think that that's strange? I've always wondered why? But if you thought about it, the Father hasn't gone anywhere. The Father hasn't passed away, but he has given his authority to his Son. He has allowed his Son to be the king. Because this is an attribute of God the Father to give of himself, having his Son as a king. And Jesus expresses this same attribute to the extent that it can be. And so in Scripture, we see him appoint lesser authority to specific roles. Mankind is to have dominion over the earth's creatures. Parents are to have authority over their little creatures. Kings have authority over their subjects. And at various times we see in the Bible disciples being given authority in the church or told to preach with authority, just as Jesus did. Like in this incident here with the 72. So what's happening here? Well, the important thing is not in the kind of authority we have, but the source of the authority that has been given to us. The authority that we have today is in the knowledge of the truth of the gospel we preach. It gives us the confidence to speak it with assurance and discernment. And the role we have been appointed by Jesus is an ambassador, one that comes to foreign kingdoms and represents the king of our kingdom. An ambassador never works for his own interest, but only to the interest of their king. And they speak confidently of how they know their king would respond, while other times they are wise only to listen and then when to pass along another diplomat's message. We act and testify to his authority. And we are under the realm of his reign. And because we have a good king, he has appointed us responsibilities and powers under his own. But there's a catch. This is not optional. They are to be exercised because he commands us to have a faith that produces fruit. So we must engage with the responsibilities and powers given. You know, as a dad, I need to engage in the authority of the role that I have for the sake of what God has entrusted me with. And if I don't engage, it's not just that I'm failing to live up to the role, but I've missed the significance of it for my own identity. And this is why a faith without works is dead. It's a hollow faith that has no significance, has no impact to the person of faith, but no anchors to the object of faith either. And it's crazy to think that God, the God of the universe, has entrusted us with important things of his kingdom. And to scoff at that means we think God is naive. Like, what are you, stupid? Don't you not pay attention? Like, you know how we handle power. What are you doing? But I think we underestimate God's faithfulness to us, his sovereign will over us. The characteristic in God that would give something important and precious into the hands of scoffers and doubters. See, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, Jesus says. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, there's that word again, pay attention. I am with you always to the end of the age. As God gives us responsibility and power, he is faithful to remain with us. And in his authority, he has commanded us to expand the kingdom, to go and make other disciples, to teach them in the ways of what God has taught us. And he will always be present in that. God will see it through with us until his commands are fulfilled at the end of the age. His authority, his name, was the currency that the 72 were entrusted to spend. And the demons, they did not fear the authority of the disciples. No way. They feared the authority that was backing the disciples in their mission. Imagine that moment when it did happen, though. When even the demons fell to the name that they professed. And I bet it made them feel all the more connected to Jesus, that their faith in everything Jesus had told them up to this point was invigorated and made alive. And they probably felt more in line with God's will than ever. I mean, how many times have you felt like that? Where God's work in your life creates one of those spectacular moments where there's just evidence galore of his hand in everything. Those moments tend to spearhead our faith for a while, don't they? They rejuvenate our love for Jesus and we feel on mission again. I'm probably feeling that right now at Kingship as we're starting a new church. And boy, do we have stories of God's hand in overseeing Kingship and what's happening right now. But in experiencing success in God's kingdom, our faith is renewed. Absolutely. It's another piece of doubt that's chipped away and we gain this kind of spiritual high, if you will. Until, of course, it wears off, right? I can only think about all the times that as a youth pastor, I was with youth that went on mission trips, camps, and they came back with such spiritual highs until it rubbed off and they felt like, I got to get back to that camp. And then we start looking around, right? We start looking around for that next moment, even as adults. Or maybe something else happens for you, where the next time we're put in this situation, we have confidence in ourselves rather than the authority that backed us up last time. If we jump back to the story of Moses, there's two moments in his life that kind of define this misplacement in by whose authority. First, Moses is leading the Israelites in the desert, and they're thirsty, complaining, and doubting God. I mean, what else is new? Why did you bring us here? We're in the middle of nowhere. We may as well go back and be slaves. Moses, he's always frustrated with these guys, but Moses says, and he goes and asks God for help, and so God says this, behold, pay attention, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Now, pay attention. Moses was given responsibility and the power to strike the rock and have the water produced. It was in his ability to do this, right? And he not only just did this, he did this in front of other people, that there were elders of Israel there. The leaders were there to witness this. But notice this other point, that the Lord said, I will stand before you there on the rock. That the Lord was present with Moses as he did this. Now the second time comes around, and God instructs Moses in this a similar way, the way he did before, except there was this slight difference. Instead of striking the rock, he was to speak to it and command that the rock yielded water for the people. Now, people are grumbling, complaining again, as they seem to always do. And Moses and Aaron, they're at their full. We've heard it. Oh my gosh, Lord, please do something. So the Lord instructs them again, but there's a slight difference this time. And so as Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together, okay, so they've started to bring more and more people there together before the rock. And he said to them, here now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock. Did you catch it? See, Moses was misguided here. He had misrepresented to the people and himself the significance of his role. Moses is responsible to the command, not the outcome. Moses then strikes the rock instead of speaking because his faith was not in the confidence of the instructions given by the Lord, but in the confidence of the experience he had before. And so he imitates what he knows, not the one who he trusts in. He relies on himself, thinking that the authority comes from him in his abilities. And this is what Jesus was warning the 72. See, it's not wrong for us or the 72 to be joyful in the moments and experiences that reveal God's glory and power. It's okay, but it's dangerous for them to become our central focus. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. So while our responsibility and power given is to be exercised, it's not to become dislocated from God's instructions. We must remain tethered to the source. And Jesus saw the beginnings of a slippery slope of pride, the slow burn where we overvalue ourselves to the success of the kingdom. We elevate the temporary victories over the eternal victory over death. And we can only be joyful in God's work here on earth because the fact that he has claimed us as our own. We can't comprehend what God has done unless God has shaken us out of our dead state. See, our ultimate joy is being found in the saving grace of Jesus Christ. That what he has done, our salvation, that is where our true joy comes from, and everything else is a response. The danger of emphasizing a result of Jesus' authority and power over his actual authority and power has us forgetting the source, which, by the way, then leaves what? A vacuum to be filled by, guess what? Yours truly. When we become reliant on our past experiences and abilities, our faith rests on the wisdom of man instead of the power of God. Pride has a way of distorting the truth. It can even take something that belongs to God and redirect it to belonging to us. And it's a slow slope, yes, that convinces us each little step of the way with each small lie. And it starts with forgetting that it is because of his name that our name is written in heaven.